So again, the housekeeping notes session will be recorded. Please ask any questions via the questions panel, and there will be a brief survey afterwards. Quickly about me, I'm a software analytics architect here at New Relic, located out of Los Angeles. My focus in my career has been a variety of things. I started off doing actual mechanical engineering, working at a power plant out of Chicago, moved on to more data science, data analytics stuff, and then have done some selling solutions roles and some product management roles. I joined New Relic back in 2015, relatively new. What I want to focus largely on today is how New Relic fits into your DevOps toolkit and how the different parts of New Relic can help you, walk further along that DevOps path. And the DevOps path, so this is a sort of a quote that I've never seen attributed to anyone, and you guys might recognize it from some maybe an obnoxious fitness meme or something like that, but I think it actually really applies to DevOps quite well. A lot of people get started on the DevOps journey and give up halfway through, or don't get started because they see it as too great of a task to overcome. But really, like most things, it's the process is the result, right? Once you're on the DevOps journey, you're doing DevOps. There's no sort of end state where you stop and you give up and you don't continue to push and continue to think about how you can do this better. DevOps is kind of a mindset, and today I want to cover sort of three things that we think of as important for DevOps, three sort of concepts. And those three are culture. How do we shift the mindset of the people and the culture from our sort of siloed organizations to a DevOps culture? Then automation. How do we automate things in a way that allows us to basically produce better software faster, for lack of a longer explanation? And then how do we measure the performance of both our journey along the DevOps line, but also the software we're making? We have to have measurements, we have to have feedback loops, and we have to be doing those sort of things. If you're already a New Relic user, you might quickly be like, oh, I know some of the ways that New Relic does automation and measurement, like tracking deploys or tracking response time and those things. But we're going to touch a little deeper into that today. So the first one is the culture. I get measure and automate, right? This is a monitoring tool. I suspect it can measure a bunch of things. I'm not sure everything on automate, but it can be great to do that sort of stuff. And for culture, people usually point to a few things, right? They'll tell you to train and hire generalists. You no longer want someone who's completely ops focused, or completely devs focused, or completely siloed in their own sort of knowledge. You want to start hiring generalists, and you don't want sort of tunnel focused experts. You want people to understand the aspects of application management. So for that, New Relic is, we're built on an easy to implement platform, so you don't need to be a complete expert in all the idiosyncrasies of monitoring tools to do this. We'll go deeper into that later. Sort of continuous integration and deployment. There's probably some other tools in your toolkit that really, really push continuous integration deployment, like Chef or Puppet. However, New Relic helps with that because if you're running a Java application, it's a jar file that you include in that Chef recipe, and it auto instruments on the application, and it sends data directly to our SaaS platform. So you're not actually standing up anything in your infrastructure. You're not worried about, is the New Relic collector on site working? Are the New Relic databases, running correctly? Are they full? What does that look like? So you don't need to start up hardware or code changes. So the other big thing that we'll talk about today that's really important as we move on the journey is having a single source of truth. Right? A lot of organizations, especially some larger ones I've walked into or you've walked into, and you'll see they've got 50 different point solutions to cover the same thing, right? They've got their servers are monitored with Nagios, their application servers are monitored with X, their databases are monitored with this, their load balancers are monitored with this, the network with this, the mobile app with this, the web client with this, the CDN with this, the video stream with this, and you can really just expand it. And then when you've got those teams, you're trying to bring them together, maybe team A within the ops organization really likes, this cloud tool. And then team B really likes this one, and the numbers don't agree, and, the back-end guys, they only want to look at logs, and the logs don't always have the exact same numbers as the other tool. And it can be a big impediment to building DevOps, and it's something that you want to worry about early, and you want to really build towards a single source of truth of data. So you want Dev and Ops to use the same tools and build the same code so that they're looking at everything through the same lens. So you can really understand better what you're monitoring and what those things are. So the first step in building the culture, depending on where you are, but largely the first step, if you're moving from a siloed organization, is to break down the silos, right? If you've been a long-time siloed organization, there might be some bad blood between Dev and Ops. Breaking down those silos is certainly the first step. So once you've broken down those silos and you've moved towards DevOps, you start on the promise of sort of continuous software delivery with less complex problems to fix and faster resolution of problems. So you'll be delivering better software faster. You'll be tracking your issues in, maybe the Atlassian stack or something like that, and you'll be able to resolve them faster. You'll also be working towards improved organizational culture and enhanced employee engagement. So we all know how hard it is to retain good talent, and typically that good talent doesn't thrive and is not necessarily happy in big siloed organizations. People want to expand their knowledge base, and they want to be challenged, and they want to learn new things. So you'll allow employees to be more engaged and be happier in general. You'll also allow them to decrease incident response time, which is, the creme de la creme, right? We want better software with fewer incidents, and we want to resolve them faster. And, probably the most important is let's keep your customers happy, right? If the software is better, your customers are happy. So that the bad blood we talked about, right, is, I like both of these little memes, right? This is the siloed way of looking at things. I'm the developer, I write the code. And the ops people are like, what is this crap you throw over the fence to me? It doesn't work. You may have seen the bad blood in your organizations where the ops people says, oh, the developers think they know everything, and the ops people are saying, I'm sick of maintaining this piece of crap code. It doesn't work. But when both people have a skin in the game and both people are working on both sides, it really changes everyone's attitude. And so changing the culture is the first step. And New Relic can help a lot with that. New Relic can be your single source of truth. With a lot of organizations, we have not just Dev and Ops looking at the data, but we've got customer care and the application owners and the business owners and the executives. And, with that, you can really do some powerful things, right? Dev can see the performance of their code down to the method level. Ops can see if the new version is performing better than the last version. Customer care can follow an individual through their troubleshooting issues. The app owners can measure their, and track their KPIs. The business owners can see if the site's open for business or taking orders if it's an e-commerce site. And the executives can track week over week activity or revenue. And so having something like this as your single source of data between teams will allow those teams to better collaborate and better, discuss issues. So as you combine those teams, we want to make sure that there's a single source of truth between everyone. So that's largely culture. The next two things I'm going to talk about a little combined, which are automate and measure, and sort of how can New Relic help you do automation and measurement in the concept of DevOps, right? How can it help with the DevOps method of automation and measurement, right? We've got our single source of truth. We're breaking down the silos. We're combining teams. Everyone's got a skin in the game. But the other two concepts, how can it help you automate and measure? Right. So the first one that comes to mind is New Relic will dynamically map application dependencies and endpoints. So right out of the box, as you're building software and those teams are learning new roles and you're building out generalists, you don't need someone who's everyone doesn't need to be an expert on all the little idiosyncrasies of the architecture, right? New Relic will automatically map them out. It'll give you statuses on each node or each application or each service. And so you'll be able to quickly understand, if there's a bottleneck, where is it on which service, if he's moving to like a service-oriented architecture, or, what connection to what service is slowing it down. So perhaps if you get woken up in the middle of the night because there's an alert on some service, right? You can see if that service is actually affecting end users, right? You can see the browser component on the map, and you can say, well, this particular alert is not necessarily affecting end users, so let's put it as a normal JIRA ticket and do it during business hours. We don't need to wake everyone up. Versus, oh, this service is affecting end users. It's affecting the mobile app and the web client, so we need to wake people up and we need to fix this now. So those are the new things. And then as you deploy new versions of the code, you can quickly see if those dependencies are mapped, if things are talking as you intended. So it allows you to speed up that time of QA and dev and testing as well. So with that, if you see an issue, you can drill into it, and you're able to see quickly, the response time of that particular component within the system, that particular service. And by taking that data, we can take the data from the map and the data from the individual services or applications, and we can map those to business outcomes, and so that you can see how the application performance is affecting the business, right? How is this slowness on a particular service affecting revenue day over day, and is it affecting the conversion funnel, right? Is this service, this slowness affecting the conversion rate or the conversion percentage? So really powerful things that we can measure right off the bat. And as we look further at that map, right, it not only just maps dependencies, so when you deploy new versions in the code, you can see if it's performing as you intended. We can also look deeper into the service map and track performance bottlenecks down to which layer it's performing. So here we see that, right, the browser storefront is humming along nicely. It's green. It's going well. And then these supporting apps are going well. The storefront, the order service, the user service are all doing fine. But actually, this inventory service, we have an alert condition fired off right now. We can see there's a spike in response time here. And we can actually look upstream a little bit, and we see it's affecting this storefront app a little bit, but we don't yet see an effect on the browser. So we're able to quickly see, how an issue on one service is affecting services upstream and downstream. And then we can see if all the way upstream, if we currently have an issue with end users. So right now we could probably address this issue with inventory service without it ever affecting end users. And so it would be transparent to the end user, but it would be an actual issue, right? And we actually see that the inventory service issue here is caused by, the supporting databases behind it. So all of this is totally out of the box, auto-instrumented. We build the maps on the fly, and we do everything that way. So really nice in those ways. And it's really nice for troubleshooting, right? We drill into things and we can see where the problem is. The old way of painfully tailing logs is just honestly the worst. And if you've spent a lot of time doing it, maybe you have little tricks of the trade, but at the end of the day, no one really likes doing it. With New Relic, you'll drill into a particular application to see the slowness, and we'll go all the way down to the method or call level, and we'll show you, look, it's this particular SQL insert, and you'll get the query, and you'll get exactly what the issue is, right? So we're no longer tailing logs. We're now discovering the service map, finding the bottleneck on the service map, and drilling into the exact method, call, or function that is the issue. And so it really will change your time to remediation and your time to address issues really nicely. So no longer does someone have to be an expert in the code base to tail the logs to understand, oh yeah, that particular method calls this other service. And so we can work with that as well. It'll allow you to spend your time building software, then spend your time tailing logs and doing things like this. So you don't need to be an expert in monitoring tools to sort of pinpoint bottlenecks, which is really nice. Another really nice tool that New Relic does is we track deployments. So with each deployment of new code, you have to understand if that deployment has improved things, right? You've added code, and you want to know if that code is better than the last version, right? So how do you do that? Do you do a performance test on the old version and track those results on a spreadsheet, and then you deploy the new version and you do a perf test on that one, or you do it in production and you gather these numbers from Nagios and all these different tools and compare. Sort of that's the old way of doing things, right? If you're siloed and your group's job is just QA or perf test or ops, maybe that's your goal. But New Relic, when you deploy code, we see the deployments, we measure the performance before and after the deployments, and we build out automated deployment reports. So we can see from this list of deployments, we've had a few ones that have drastically increased the error rates. We've had this deployment and then quickly rolled to this one, this deployment, and so New Relic's gathering data in real time, so you can see in real time if that deployment is bad or slow or doing what you intended, and you can roll it back really quickly. And so if we drill into a particular deployment, we get a detailed deployment report, right? We can see the response time before and after. The gray bar here represents when the deployment happened. And so for this one, we can see there was a spike in response time immediately after. There was a spike in CPU and memory and those things, but overall, it looks like it's settled. And so we can probably take this forward and say, yes, this is a successful deployment. So if we look before the deployment and after the deployment, we can see, a little spike, but overall, it's steady and it looks successful. If we go further in, we can see, we can drill into the deployment and the sort of change report, right? We can see how the change affected particular transaction, right? Did it affect this owner's.get transaction or this owner's owner ID get transaction? And we can identify, right, if we did a deployment, where was the issue? Not only did response time spike, but where did it spike? On what call or what transaction runs the system? So we can identify perhaps where the bug is in the deployment, and so we roll it back, we can quickly fix it and retry it again. So in this case, we see that the issue was the owners.get transaction. The previous deployment, it was running really slow. The new deployment, we sped it up to 2 seconds, and so we've greatly improved that. So the other thing we can do, so that's deployments, and then the next issue of things that you want to be tracking really is incidents and changes, right? We don't want there to be an increase in incidents during deployment and during any time, and you want to be able to see that quickly, right? So here we can see the number of incidents by escalation policy. How many times are we getting notifications from clients or customers that there's a problem? We hopefully we never are getting to that level where the issue is causing users to email in and we haven't identified the issue by then. And we can see sort of alert conditions and those things. We can see incidents. We can compare this day over day, and we can see sort of incident creation and that stuff. From that, we can take that and we can understand if we have incidents, right? Remember, we're able to see the whole sort of complex environment. We can see the whole map. We can see the performance by geos. We can see the load time and the network time by geos. So we can understand, right, do I have a bunch of incidents popping up? Oh, that's weird. What's going on? Well, I can look at the map, and there just seems to be no issues there, but I could look at the geo and say, oh, it looks like Australia is orange. And then specifically, maybe this city down here is the problem. We can click on that, and we can see the response time there, and we can filter the data, and we can understand, if that problem is localized to Australia, what is the issue? Is it a CDN issue? Is it some other issue? Is it, was there a bad version of the code deployed over there and nowhere else? And so being able to understand incidents in the context of geo and load time and network time and the services themselves is really powerful when you're trying to do things like that. The other really nice feature, as you bring Dev and Ops together towards a single source of truth in terms of New Relic, one of the really nice things is being able to share information between two people. Right? The old way is maybe I take a screenshot from Nagios and I send that over to the dev, and he looks at logs and he sends me, a list of what the log output is, and we sort of pass information between logs and Nagios and other random tools back and forth, but we're not looking at the same thing. So with New Relic, you can sort of document your investigation. So in this particular example, right, our friend Joe here saw that the response time was spiking on this particular tier, and so he says, you know, there's a spike in response time. It looks like it's the JVM time, the light, you know, blue blob to be specific. And then he can move on. He can say, well, it looks like it's a particular transaction, this categories.get transaction, or the green blob. And then he can look further and say, well, it doesn't look like there was a particular database issue there, so we can rule out database, so I don't need to pass this to the DBA. And all of those, that investigation is tracked in New Relic. It's what we call a note. And you make a note, and you can share that note in a number of ways. You can share it across email, or you can use the Jira integration, and you can file a ticket with Jira. So we have a nice Jira integration where there's a two-way integration, so you can open tickets and close tickets through New Relic, and you know it's real powerful and nice. But this is a nice collaboration tool because you know, maybe someone has done some low-level investigation or some high-level investigation, and they want to pass that to another team either through a Jira because the issue is not pressing, or they want to pass it, you know, immediately through email, or they want to take the permalink from it and they want to send them to them. And this will take them into New Relic to the exact moment in time so they can branch out their investigation beyond just what transaction was it, maybe which service was it within that transaction. More of what we talk about too is, you know, how do we get more automated? How do we test systems in an automated fashion so that we can, you know, understand issues before maybe even our monitoring does, or before our certainly before our clients do, or before anyone sees an issue. And so this is the sort of the function of New Relic, or Synthetic, excuse me. And you're able to run functional end user tests using Selenium scripts or, you know, other things like that. And so, you know, your first step is you build out your script. Maybe that is, you know, log into a website or your website on a regular cadence from different locations around the world. So we could look back to that issue where Australia was slower than the rest of the world. We would see that here, right? We would do login from a bunch of places around the world, and we would get an alert if one place, you know, say Australia was causing an issue. And that sort of report would look like this, and you would have your splits of load time, so you could see, you know, where is it loading the quickest, where is it loading the slowest, and we can see in this case, you know, Dublin is actually the quickest, you know, probably followed by England and then by Frankfurt, and there's actually a spike in the Frankfurt time on Wednesday the 8th. And so we can see all those things coming through. We can see the average load side to see if it, you know, the size of the page increased, and so for a short time it did increase. We can then, you know, if we do see an issue or an error or a slow result, we're able to drill into that result. We get an alert about, oh, you know, this particular monitor failed from Dublin and it failed for reason X, Y, Z. And we can drill in and we can see, you know, exactly the pieces of content that were loaded, the size of the images that are loaded there, the error, and we can drill into the browser log of that error. We can see the different pages that were navigated to. And so automating that testing is another great tool for quickly understanding where the issue is, what's causing it, and if it's localized to a particular region. As we drill into that, you know, you look at the results and you can see, you know, this is for Singapore as well. We can see the spot test on Singapore and we can see the results of them. See, we had one particular error there at 6 a.m., but it seems to have resolved itself. So we could, you know, we could see the result of stuff, but we understand what happened then. So we could still drill into that and we could still understand what's going on there. And if we were to drill into that, we would, you know, we would be given an incident report. And so when you get the alert either by Slack, through our Slack integration for alerts, or PagerDuty, or HipChat, or ServiceNow, or whatever you want there, it'll take you into the incident report in New Relic, and it'll show you, you know, the checks that preceded that, and they were successful, and you can view those results and understand, you know, were things getting worse over time, right? Did the 3 tests preceded get worse, or bad, worse, and then alert? Or were they normal, 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 alert, and then normal, normal, normal? And you can go and investigate things, and you can see the severity level by that you've deemed, when it opened, when it closed, the failure, and all of those things. And as you drill into that, you'd be brought to the report and you would see, oh, this particular asset on the page took super long to load. It took almost 3 seconds, and that's what we deemed an error, right? This Facebook widget on the page took 3 seconds to load, and that's a problem. And maybe you have some sort of recourse with Facebook, and you can tell them to stop breaking your web app, but maybe you don't. And so that alert can easily be sent to Slack or other nice tools that are probably within your DevOps toolkit. And the Slack alert, you can push through maybe an alert channel, and you can see the incidents opening and closing, and you can go in there and you can do the investigation that way. So a lot of really powerful tools, some integrations with some other toolkits, right? We've got integrations with the Atlassian suite, with Jira, with fog lights, with other things like that. For alerting, we can send them to HipChat or PagerDuty or other things like that. So you can just sort of, make New Relic a part of what you're doing with DevOps, right? It's not going to be your end-all, be-all, but it should be a part of your toolkit, right? It can help you with your chef recipes or your Puppet configs, and you can understand quickly, is that recent deployment better or worse than the old deployment? It does auto instrumentation, so you understand quickly if there's an issue with the deployment. You can do investigations through the tool and then send that to Jira or fog lights or Pivotal to track issues, and so you can quickly integrate those two things. And then as you build out your alerting, you can send the alerts to your sort of collaboration tool in that way, be it Slack or HipChat or PagerDuty or VictorOps or any number of things. So that's those. But at the end of the day, what we really want to understand is we understand how these issues or these deployments or all of this work is affecting our end user. So how can we measure the performance of the end user, right? We know the users are demanding. Sometimes we get notifications from users about slowness on a page, and maybe they're traveling in a subway on their phone and expecting service that their carrier doesn't provide, and so we understand those things. Maybe they're scrolling to the page and they're seeing issues with a particular AJAX call or something like that, and that's where the client-side monitoring of New Relic really helps measure the end user performance, so you can understand if those issues with the back-end services are actually affecting end users and where and how. So as we look at the client-side monitoring, this is for a single-page app, so we see the initial page load time versus the route change time. So for the SPAs, you both have the page load, but then once the page is loaded, you have all of the route changes and all the asynchronous calls that go on the back end. We'll again match those with JavaScript errors, so you can see if there's a spike in JavaScript errors at a certain point, right? Maybe that was affecting end users. Maybe there's an issue with some of the code on the CDN and you need to go replace that. You see the response time of those AJAX calls, so if you are doing a single-page app, or I guess even if you're not doing a single-page app, you want to understand the performance of the asynchronous calls coming out of the application. We'll show you the throughput in terms of initial page load and route changes to make sure that as you move from a more standard website with no sort of single-page app actions to a single-page app, are those route changes really taking over the brunt of the load, right? Or is it people still mostly doing single-page loads and the route changes are less and less popular? Again, we'll track the AppDeck score for the application, which is a single metric for performance of the application. It's based on a few other things, so it's actually very nice that way. And then like backend monitoring, like APM, we'll track full session traces, so you can see exactly how users are interacting with your application. And so on those session traces, you can see, this is a particular page load for Mac Safari on October 12th last year, and we can see the load time of all the assets. So, right, maybe you have this particular JPEG and it's much too big and it's taking too long. This one took almost 2 seconds to load this image. And so you can take that information back and you can say, well, why is it taking 2 seconds to load an image? It's so big. Maybe we can shrink it down. It doesn't need to be that big. And so with those, you can see, right, that the processing time of the back end, the time it takes to process the DOM, the full page load, and then the time to interaction, how long the user actually spent on this page. So it'll walk you through how users are interacting with the page, how the assets are loaded on the page for real users, not just you testing in your own environment with dev tools, like that. Um, on the flip side, we also have the client-side monitoring for mobile applications. So with mobile applications, the areas of interest is a little different than web, but still, you know, the main 4 areas we talk about are obviously crashes, app launches or more or less throughput, and then HTTP response time and HTTP errors. So you want to know if those APIs that support your mobile clients are performing quickly and, you know, responding quickly. If they're delivering errors, where are the errors? What's going on in the errors? You want to know if people are adopting the new version, so we can see that people move from the green version to the yellow version. The green version being 2.3.3, the yellow version being 2.3.5, and so you can see people navigate to that new version. We can see any spikes in launches, and then, you know, for a lot of mobile devs, crashes are of particular focus, and so we can see, you know, crashes by version, crash by time, and we can really understand that. And as we drill into crashes, we capture all of them in sort of full detail, and so you can see the breadcrumbs that led up to the crash. Right? We can see this user logged in, they went to this detail fragment, they went to this other fragment, and then boom, it crashed. And so within that, we can see, you know, the breakdown of this particular crash type of, you know, what users it happened to. It seems to only happen to Nexus 5 users. We can see the line that it crashed on within the code, which thread it crashed on. And so we'll give you all of the details around the crash and around both the web client side and the mobile client side to allow you to measure, you know, not only are the users having a good experience with the site, you know, that high level stuff, but if they're not, where's the issue? So if there is that, you know, downstream issue of some service or node causing a problem, and it gets to the point where the end users are seeing the issue, well, you know, we can understand where they're seeing the issue. You know, is it a particular, you know, breadcrumb sequence, is a particular fragment, is a particular page, or vice versa, right? If there's no issue on the back end and we see an issue with the client side, where is that? Is that, you know, localized to a particular CDN? Is there some bad JavaScript out there that's causing things to crash and all of that? So some really nice things here that you're able to track from client side and back end side and drill and stitch those together. And that's great. And so as you're building the DevOps, you've got the single source of truth. You've got, you know, everyone on the same page in terms of understanding where and how they can address these issues. But the other thing we talked about is, right, is, okay, I still need to pull this data out. I still got to put it in spreadsheets. I've still got to show it to the business owners so, you know, they know what's going on. I still got to track those KPIs for the business. And so how do I use the New Relic data to track those KPIs? Right, you're working really hard. You're doing new deploys. You're fixing issues. You're adding new features. You're, you know, addressing bugs. But at the end of the day, you've still got this pressure from above to deliver, you know, business-specific measurements for the app owners or, you know, the executives and things like that. And this is where that richness of data in the SaaS platform comes into play, right? Because all of the data from all of the different endpoints and all of the agents is going into New Relic, we can take that data and we can chop it up and we can just build a business dashboard using the simple New Relic query language around, you know, the business KPIs that we want to track. You know, so if we want to understand users day over day, or revenue day over day, or we want to understand what pages are most popular, or, you know, how many times does the home page take longer than 3 seconds, we can see that. We can see the average cart value versus the number of errors. We can see the conversion funnel. And so this is a dashboard that, you know, the data is all coming from the agents that you've deployed to do your troubleshooting, to do your operations monitoring. But we can take that data and we can slice it a different way. And the dashboard's updated in real time, so everyone has visibility into this, and we've brought a single source of truth not only to dev and ops, but to business and app owners and executives as well. So no longer are people fighting over, you know, is this, you know, is tool A right? Is tool B right? Is tool C right? It's more about, you know, what are we trying to do and how are we trying to make this service better for our customers? No more fighting over that. And you can take and you chop it up like this and put this up on a screen. You can build out, you know, an app in itself, a data app, and you can have tabs on it, and so people can scroll through not just a single dashboard, but multiple dashboards put together, and they can understand, you know, how is their service or application performing for everyone, and is it performing better than it was last week, And are we open for business? Are payments successful? How many active customers do we have? Order value per customer, all really, really important measurements to see what's going on. And so with this, we're able to track, we're able to integrate with all of your other toolkits from your DevOps toolkit, like your Chef, your Puppet, your Pivotal, and those things. We're able to push those alerts to Slack and other tools. We're able to bring things together with a single source of truth. We're able to show you how upstream things are affecting downstream things, how deployments are, how successful are deployments, and where are they, if they are unsuccessful, where exactly was that. We're taking you away from a tailing logs life. We're bringing you to sort of pinpointing issue and really reducing mean time to response. And because we have all that data, we can slice it up any way we want to build. We can build ops dashboards, we can build dev dashboards, we can build these sort of business dashboards that we've showed quite a bit. And so, in summation, I'll say that New Relic should be a tool within your DevOps toolkit, and one of the biggest drivers of using it is to moving towards a single source of truth and allowing, for generalists, right? You don't need a monitoring expert. You don't need someone who, you've got 2 guys on staff who are the only guys licensed to use this big clunky monitoring tool and they're the only ones who use it. New Relic is a fast platform. You don't stand up any infrastructure on your end. It's quick agent deploys across the application servers and across the hosts themselves. All that data is fed in. We have a bunch of curated views. We have a bunch of custom views, and all of those things allow your journalists to be better at their job. And so with that, I'll move towards sort of next steps and questions, and I'll go through the questions in the question box now. We've got a sort of a DevOps hub on New Relic where we put a bunch of pieces of content so you can dig into any of the ways that New Relic can help. So in general, sort of the benefits of DevOps if you're not walking down that journey already. Excuse me. Measuring DevOps, sort of how can you measure the performance there? Your modern DevOps tool set. What is DevOps, if that's the point you're at as well. And so you can dig into any of those. So I'll pause there for a second, and I'm going to look through the question list to see if there's any questions. No questions in there. So one of the things that we had last time is how do these integrations work, and how can I use them more effectively? Right. So the one that we get a lot with New Relic is we see the Jira integration. Right. So people are using Jira more and more often, and how can New Relic integrate with it? So there are kind of 2 ways to deploy Jira, right? You can deploy the Atlassian stack in your infrastructure and do it that way, or you can use the cloud version. Either way, it doesn't matter. You sort of give New Relic a role within Jira, and we will, allow you to take issues, be it errors or notes you've tracked or crashes, and automatically push those into Jira so that you can track them there, and you can go back and forth and understand, right, what's going on about that. And so that's one of the good ones. We have another question there. So about the conversion funnel you displayed on the business metrics slide, would this require custom events to be enabled on the application? Good question. So by default, New Relic doesn't capture any PII. So out of the box, we don't want to be pulling PII out of your system, personally identifiable information. And so that usually includes card value and things like that. But for conversion funnels, the way that we do it is we have a session ID that we create. So we don't capture the session ID from the browser. We create one, and as a user hits pages or route changes or those things, we capture an event for every page they hit, for every route change they hit, and each event is dedicated or decorated with a session ID. And so we're able to take that and look at, for each session ID, how many users went to the home page, and then of those sessions, how many went to, add item, and then how many users went to add to cart, and how many users went to checkout. So with the default attributes we capture, you should be able to define conversion funnel, assuming that you know which URLs represent sort of conversion. You know which URL represents cart and those things, which usually is pretty straightforward. Next question: what is the New Relic data sampling frequency, and how might it impact application performance? So I don't know that New Relic does data sampling per se. What New Relic does is, for a Java application, we do bytecode instrumentation on the app, and we track the the performance of the transactions going in and out of the application, and we track the methods below those. And so where we do sample is we don't capture full stack traces of all the methods and all of the calls to other services for every transaction. We capture the performance of every transaction, but we don't capture that full stack unless there's an error or unless that transaction was slow, and then we give you some random ones so you can sort of see the comparison between normal behavior and abnormal behavior. And with that level of monitoring, typically we see between 2 to 5% overhead per the JVM, per the application server. So there's going to be overhead because you have to track this stuff, but with New Relic, it's meant to run in production, and it's meant to be lightweight, so you're able to run it in production right out of the box. There are tools within New Relic where you can, drill down the instrumentation. So if you want to see further down the stack, or you want to see this call or that call, you can drill that down. But we don't do that generally out of the box because we want to stay lightweight, so you can run in production without your worries. I don't see any other questions in there. I'm not sure if the New Relic Dublin team on the line has any questions. But if not, I encourage you all to go to the New Relic DevOps Hub. The really nice thing about New Relic being a SaaS platform is that you can try it out, right? I think you get 30 days free. Go to newrelic.com, create an account, pull down the agent, throw in your application, and you'll have data in 5 minutes. It's truly that simple, and it's really nice to try out. So you can go to the DevOps Hub, see how you like it, see how it works with you. And so those are all things you can use. And if you missed any part of this, or you want to pass this to any other people in your organization, we are recording it, and we'll have that recording posted to the website soon. If there's no other questions, I will stop there, and I will let you guys have the rest of your day back. Thanks, everyone. Oh, so there's just a question about Magento 2. There's a bug. We just fixed it. There's a new version of the PHP agent to download. So go to the New Relic release notes, get the new version of Magento 2, and it will no longer show the unknown transaction. So I don't know if you're still on, but definitely check it out. It just came out, I think, yesterday, so really timely question. That bug has been fixed. It is in the new version. Good, you're still on. There's another question about on-premise version. So we don't offer an on-premise version, and we can talk about that in a bunch of different ways, but the main way we talk about it is it's counterintuitive to what we want to do as an organization, and probably what a lot of organizations want to do with their tools. So ours is a highly redundant SaaS deployment. So if you're going to deploy this on-prem, you're going to deploy HA, and you're going to have two, sort of collectors or something like that. You're going to have databases. You're going to stand up all this infrastructure, and then you're going to be the one in charge of maintaining it. You got to put monitoring on that, and at the end of the day, it's just not something we want to be doing. And so we're fully SaaS, and for a variety of reasons, but mainly because supporting a bunch of on-prem work versions around the world, back supporting old versions, and trying to deploy new features to those versions just don't allow us to do that. And one of the things that we're working on now is sort of mining that data. So we've got a group in our Portland office that's building out a bunch of different services around mining the data. So we want to show you, we want to take all this data, this deluge of data, and sift through it for you so you can quickly understand, where I should be looking. Not necessarily where there's a problem, but sort of what's going on and what interesting correlations do you see in the data, so I can just do day-to-day investigation. We're collecting for an enterprise user, we'll collect 10 million metrics. And so to sift through that can take forever. So we're using that and this huge amount of data we have on our end and our data science team to build out a service we call See More. And See More is a feed of sort of events that are going on in the systems, that things that are saying like, oh, this server's disk space is at 20%, but based on other servers in your system and how quickly they fill up and what's going on, we expect this one to be full in a week. And so you can go dig into things, be way more proactive. So there's a lot of great things about being SaaS. Not only not having to support on-prem infrastructure for you guys and for us, but also having that data in one place. So we can take the data of our, I think we've got 14,000 customers now. Take that and look at the correlations from customer A e-commerce and customer B, and use that to devise, criteria for sending people information about things they can and should investigate. When are you planning to have account recertification? Accounts deactivate after X time of inactivity? I don't know if I totally get the question, but accounts in general, they don't get deleted, they just get put in the background on our end, so we retain most accounts. So if you had an account and you didn't use it for a long time and you want that account name back, you should be able to get it back. So if you email our support and say, yeah, I used to have this account, I want it back, it still exists there. We just sort of make it invisible to the end users at times if you're not active. Am I familiar with how gambling sites work and regulatory things? Would this break any security privacy rules? So I'm not as privy to security privacy rules in the UK or gambling in general, but I know that if it's anything like healthcare or finance in the US, there are rules about PII data. And this is back to a point I made earlier of New Relic out of the box doesn't collect any PII data. And so for some of our customers in the US that I've worked with, like finance or healthcare, they keep it that way, right? New Relic collects performance metrics around stuff like that. And so, I've gone through a lot of security reviews, and typically, we're classified as like, tier 3 data or something like that. And we package the data up every 1 minute. We encrypt it. We send it over the wire with SHA-256. So we rarely have issues where, security teams saying, oh, that particular data that New Relic is collecting and that they're transporting over SSL encrypted can't leave like that. So it's performance data, and I suspect that, if you have similar security privacy rules for gambling sites in the UK, at least on the level of US healthcare and finance, you should be fine, particularly because we're not capturing any PII. That's the last one I see. I actually had stopped recording when those ones answered, so those answers are just for you guys, and they don't go on the recording. But thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and enjoy the web. I hope you enjoyed the webinar, and hope you enjoy, the DevOps Hub there at newrelic.com/DevOps. Thank you. Bye-bye.